All right. Should you write a book? Should someone or anyone write a book? I get asked questions about launching books all the time. How can I make my book a bestseller? Have you written a book? No, I'm going to write a book. Have you written any books before? No. Why are you writing a book? And we get into this conversation. And ultimately, I ask one question, and that is, for the period of a year, can you make this your number one priority? For a period of at least a year, can this be your number one? If you have a company, that means your business is number two. If you have a family, that means your family is number two. Can this be your number one priority for a year? That's the general litmus test, because if you put out a mediocre book, or even a good book, a good enough book, which by the way equals shitty, as Brian Grazer, legendary film and TV producer, would say, it's more of a liability than a help. Okay, so a mediocre book is more of a liability than no book at all. You can't take it back. So, as Michael Gerber told me, who wrote The E-Myth Revisited, which is a book that had a huge impact on me, before I launched the 4-Hour Workweek, he said, if you're going to write a book, write a fucking book. Meaning, like, you're all in. All of your chips are into this book. So how did I know that I should do the 4-Hour Workweek, right? Was it that obvious? Was it clear? Was I dying to be a writer? Which, by the way, I don't think is a necessary checkbox. You don't have to write the book yourself necessarily. Open by Andre Agassi, by the way, Andre Agassi, was ghostwritten, but it was a collaboration that took a long time and a lot of Andre's time. Beautifully written, but nonetheless required a lot of focus from him. So you can have a collaborator, but my, I suppose, hurdle was, it was easier for me to get it out of my head than it was for me to live with it in my head, all right? It was less painful to put it down than to have it ricocheting inside my head. And I had all these experiences from 2004 to, say, end of 2005, where I was restructuring and reformulating my entire business to run without me, traveling the world for 18 months without any set schedule, meeting all these case studies. And I was teaching a class at Princeton twice a year, sometimes in person, sometimes remotely, in high-tech entrepreneurship, where I was sharing my findings about scaling a bootstrapped business. And that slowly morphed into lifestyle design, how to create a business or career to allow you to take advantage of the most valuable non-renewable resource, which is time. So I'm already giving these 2 to 3 hour classes, and I would take notes. And over time, because one of the students said, why don't you just write a book and be done with it, as opposed to teaching a class of 40 students, which was actually a snarky Princeton student response. It wasn't a real suggestion, I don't think. Nonetheless, I had insomnia for many, 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 many years, and I couldn't get to sleep because these chapter ideas would come. These stories would come to mind, and I just couldn't get to sleep without jotting down a little note on a piece of paper. And I ended up with a huge pile of paper on lessons learned and so on. And I knew that at least 2 of my friends, right, and there were 2 specific friends in mind, one who was trapped in a decent paying job where he had no time, disliked what he was doing, but he could finally afford that nice car, right? So he felt like he was trapped. And then I had a friend who had started his own company who similarly was making decent money, but felt trapped in a monster of his own making. And I felt these notes would help them, okay? Did not want to write a book at that point. Actively did not want to write a book, all right? But I felt a moral obligation to share this material somehow, and a few of my friends who were authors recommended that I explore the path to publishing it. And I made a few assumptions going into it, because keep in mind, I did not want to write a book. I assumed it was going to be extremely difficult and brutal to write the book, which it was. I mean, we're talking repeated moments of doubt, I should throw in the towel, I am going to have a nervous breakdown, repeatedly. Okay? That has more or less been the case for every book that I've written. I'm at 5 now. The second assumption was that I was going to probably hate the book itself, which I did. Okay? And that has been largely true for every book I've done. Assume that up until a year after the book comes out, you're going to look at it and be disappointed with what you've produced. Given that, the third assumption was that I would write the book, and if it even changed the life of 1 or 2 people, that would justify all the pain, all the self-loathing, all the loathing of the book, all of the opportunity cost of putting it together, right? And that, last but not least, it was easier for me, less painful for me to get it out and throw a Hail Mary and hope for the best than to keep it inside of me and wonder what if, okay? So a lot of different check boxes. And the book, keep in mind, 4-Hour Workweek was rejected by 27 publishers. And then when it was finally printed, first print run was about 10,000 copies. You don't even get national distribution with that. Nobody really expected a whole lot. And then with the same amount of focus that I put into the writing, put into the launch, ended up hitting the New York Times bestseller list, and now it's millions of copies in 40 plus languages, okay? But I don't think you get to millions of copies in 40 plus languages trying to write a book for the world that is going to help your business. I just don't think it happens. I've never seen it happen. And instead, check all the boxes that I mentioned, and I wrote this book for 2 friends, very specifically. And by personalizing it in that way, by talking to them in a very conversational way, we ended up with the results that we had. Could have very easily gone a different direction, but if you can listen to everything I've just said and you think to yourself, I should write a book, then by all means, go for it. But for most people, this doesn't mean I am a great writer, therefore you need to be a great writer. No, I'm just saying it was less painful for me to put it out than to keep it in my head. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the tips and tactics and how-to on this channel or in the podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show, I made this for you. Tribe of Mentors, short advice from the best in the world. This is the book that I wanted to read, so I went out and I put it together. Created a dream list of 130 of the best at what they do, people who are icons, legends, and asked them all the same questions. These are people, in some cases, I've wanted to reach out to my whole life. Ranges from many, many billionaires, co-founders of every company imaginable, elite athletes ranging from surfing to tennis to powerlifting, everything else, country stars, actors, directors, and you can spot the patterns. So some of my friends have said this is the easiest to read, most useful book that I've put together yet. So check it out, tribeofmentors.com. You can find sample chapters, the whole list of mentors, everything, tribeofmentors.com.